I know I am between you and dinner, but dinner arrives when the caterers arrive it, so I can't really do anything about that. So I'd say just settle in, get comfortable. I've only got, 30, 45 minutes or so. Whatever it takes, that's what I like to hear. 5:45, is that the orders of the day, Pastor? So as we've noted, the installation of Pastor Kelsey Fitting-Schneider was a big part of our life this past year and bringing her on staff, and we are grateful again. I'm grateful that we could gather at Good Shepherd and have that installation service at our September Synod Council meeting. We continue to live into being at Good Shepherd. We're continuing to live into the spaces we occupy. We're trying to decide what we want to do with certain things. But overall, I think it's been a very positive relationship for us and for the congregation. So Pastor Catherine, thank you to you and your congregation for that hospitality. What I hope that's doing is modeling for us as Synod of being creative about how we use space, being creative about how we support ministries. It also is a good reminder to us as Synod of the world we serve. Because there are people who come to Good Shepherd in many different capacities. And we are near the Honduran consulate, so there are people who come speaking many different languages. And that is the universe in which we live. And so for us as Synod staff, also to see the daily ins and outs of being in a parish, right? What that's like. And the reminding of all of the things that go on there. So again, we're grateful to God for that, and we're grateful to have Kelsey on staff. Over the course of the year, one of the best things I get to do, one of my favorite things to do, is to celebrate faith and milestones with our congregations. When you invite me to come out for confirmation or first communion, when I can be there with young people, I don't get to do baptisms much anymore. That's not the gig of the bishop. But I do enjoy being there with your congregations to support those opportunities. And so please, as you have confirmations or other services of milestones, please do call and ask, and we'll see if we can get on the schedule, because that is a great joy. In 2024, we also had the great joy of going to the National Youth Gathering. The ELCA Youth Gathering was a wonderful opportunity to grow in faith and to learn and to grow. We're blessed as NTNL. We're blessed in many ways, but one of the ways that we were blessed is because of the decisions made about the Briarwood Leadership Endowment. We could offer over $150,000 to our congregations directly to get transportation, to pay registration fees, to do hotels. It's an expensive endeavor to do the youth gathering. But for those kids to be with 16,000 others, and Pastor Phil Hirsch can talk about that a little bit more tomorrow in his report. He spoke to us at Synod Council today, and looking at how we can grow that. It was wonderful. We didn't have the drop-off that many synods had post-COVID because we were able to support that ministry, and we had kids from all over the synod, not just from one part of the synod, not just certain places. I'm also really lucky in that Janelle Miller from Calvary in Richland Hills, who does so much of our youth helps coordinate for me the bishops group. And this is one of the best things that I get to do as well. We've done it twice now in 2018 and 2024, is that I get to be the youth leader. I get to be the group leader for a group of kids from around our synod, from congregations that don't have an adult sponsor, maybe have one or two kids. And the best thing about it is Janelle coordinates it for me. So I can show up and she hands me the binder, and she tells me where we're going to go, and I get to be with the young people and talk to them and be with them. And we went to Shreveport first for a service project, and we drove out there, and the things that get talked about in a van on a youth trip. We'll just leave it at that. But there's faith development, kids asking questions, teenagers wrestling with issues of how does the church relate to each other? How do we relate to justice issues in the world? How do we relate to issues of LGBTQA rights in the world? These kids are dealing with this in their schools, in their homes, in their families. And so to bring them to a place where they say, these are people of faith who care about you enough to organize this big event so that you can know you're not alone. And for Lutherans in Texas, that is important. It's why we have to have Synod Assembly, because we need to be together. And so we were grateful for that, and we had a lot of fun. And it poured rain the afternoon we were supposed to do the scavenger hunt. And Pastor Kelsey was in Cafe Du Monde undercover, drinking her coffee and eating her, along with Heath Abel. And I was out there drenched to the bone, serving, loving these kids. But it was fun because we ran into my daughter's group from Trinity in Fort Worth, and so the picture on the bottom there on the left, that's me and my daughter being drenched on Canal Street. What was mentioned, Irma mentioned about the pilgrimage to Germany. That was a wonderful opportunity that we had to do that. It's a joy, it's a privilege, it's an immense privilege to be able to lead a group to Germany, to anywhere overseas. It's something that Kendra and I have enjoyed doing, something we don't take for granted, and it was wonderful to have 35 NTNL lay and rostered folks join us this year as we went to Germany, and we focused on what we call witnessing history. We wanted to do the Luther sites for sure, but we also wanted to think about how Luther was a witness, right? He was a witness. Luther was a witness to what he believed to be right about the gospel. And so we learn from that and we grow from that. And so we were able to go to places where we saw that. We also remembered that we wanted to be witnesses in different ways. And so we went to Leipzig, to the church of J.S. Bach, and to the St. Nicholas Kirche in Leipzig. And if you don't know the story of the St. Nicholas Kirche, you should Google it. That's what you have Google for. But the witness of those people of faith in the face of communist oppression, and witnessing history and going to Buchenwald, and remembering how twisted the world can get, and that people of our shared faith, in their country, these terrible things happened because demonization of others is possible. So we wanted to do those things and witness, and we also, because, again, of our legacy endowment, we were able to help pastors, 8 NTNL leaders who had not visited these sites to get to go and to have that opportunity. And so to provide that context so that we hope it enriches your preaching and teaching. We also, last December, got to host our Region 4 bishops here, and we were so grateful for the people of Adviento in Arlington who invited Bishop Reinhardt and I to come for First Communions and Confirmations, and then out at San Gabriel in Alvarado for the big cabalgata. We didn't get everybody on horses. It was a little slick. It rained. I'm not that good on a horse, so probably not a great idea. But it was fun to share that with my colleagues in Region 4 and to share that opportunity. We also installed and welcomed new leaders. We've only got 2 on here that we've got others that have joined the Synod since last year, but to install Kyle Szymanski at Calvary in Richland Hills, Kirsten Wee, who's at King of Glory in Dallas, doing those installations, doing that reminds us that we are raising up leaders. I also give thanks. This last Conference of Bishops was the last Conference of Bishops where I would be in contact with Bishop Kurt Kusserow, who Kurt is from Southwestern Pennsylvania Synod, which happens to be our in the ELCA ecology, we're supposed to be partnered with another synod as in relationships to one another. And I think it's really funny that they partnered the synod with Dallas and it with Pittsburgh. In 1988, somebody had a sense of humor, I think, probably. We've been able to read each other gently from time to time. It also means we sit near each other at churchwide assembly, so you get bonds of friendship, and we can play pranks on each other, like putting a Cowboys T-shirt on his table. But Kurt has been a mentor for me, and I'm really grateful for him. And as was mentioned at our Synod Council meeting, I think, Phil, it's 22, right? 22 elections, and then 11 of them are going to be new bishops. So this coming summer, we are going, in synods across our country, we're going to have 22 bishop elections. We know 11 will be elections of a new bishop, and of course, any election could be a new bishop. And so the turnover of 65, think about this, there's 65 bishops, there's at least going to be 11 new ones. In addition, at churchwide assembly, we will be electing a new presiding bishop and a secretary for the churchwide office. So there's a lot of turnover and change happening in your church, and you're going to hear some from Anthony Ormsby Hale about the CRLC, from our church council member, Pastor Nick Villardell. Will hear more about what's going on, but things are changing. The room looks a lot different than it did when I was first elected bishop when I go to Conference of Bishops. Sounds a lot different, and that's not a bad thing at all. We also give thanks for ministry together. Most recently, 2 congregations that are ending Word and Sacrament ministry. There are a lot of years of discernment, a lot of years of figuring things out and deciding what is going to happen. Finally, Good Shepherd and Marshall and Peace and Vernon are closing, and they're disposing of the properties. Now, we talk about money for missions and things like that. That doesn't always happen. Congregations don't always give the money to the Synod when they close. They can choose otherwise if they know that's happening, and sometimes they do so, perhaps a little bit out of spite. But in this case, both congregations, the properties are going to be sold, and they're going to be, that money can be used for mission in our church. So we give thanks for the ministries of Good Shepherd and Marshall and Peace and Vernon. At the same time, we think about how to move forward. And we were reminded this morning in Synod Council of First in Waco. And First in Waco, who 10 years ago sold their building and they've been basically pilgrims on a road trying to figure out where to go. And First in Waco is now finally going to make that decision this May to close and send their people and some of their resources to St. Matthew in Waco, making for us a stronger witness in Waco, because those folks are realizing it's time to do that and to make that step so that we can have a strong ELCA presence in Waco. The Parish Lay Ministry Academy is a great, great joy. Again, I think Don said it. If people are asking, about leadership, and I say, well, have you heard about the Parish Lay Ministry Academy? I got asked the other day at a congregation, they said, well, what does the Synod do for us besides giving us pastors? And I said, well, do you get our newsletter? Because there's a lot of stuff in there. There's a lot of resources there. But I said, have you heard of the Parish Lay Ministry Academy? And no one in the congregation that was there at the time knew. I said, well, we're going to get you information. Look it up, because that is a way to develop your lay leadership. That doesn't mean you're going to go to seminary. Okay? Don't be afraid. There are many PLMs who are doing PLM things in their congregations. What it is it's going to give you some tools and resources. And I think one of the best things it does is give you some community. Some community to gather, and we're doing it online. Well, in English, we're doing it online. In Spanish, they're still doing it together. But we're doing it online, and the online course now, we have 6 people from the Northeast Iowa Synod who are in our Parish Lay Ministry Academy, because they're seeking that community, they're seeking that knowledge, and then good on Northeast Iowa. Why try to recreate the wheel? Use what's available, and we're online. So we give thanks for that. The other thing we're working on in our Parish Lay Ministry, the Parish Lay Ministry Academy instructors has been helping us on, is working with artificial intelligence, AI. So I'm sure all of you have had some experience now with AI in some way. I mean, if you Google now, you get Google's AI responses to your questions. So if you didn't know that, cat's out of the bag. You have experienced AI, and you're going to keep experiencing AI. And so one of the things we've been doing is we've been working with a company called Solus VR that has helped us to create an NTNL AI bot. All right, so if you didn't think it needed to exist, it does exist. An NTNL AI bot that we can use to help create curriculum, to help create resources, to answer questions, because then we can control what goes into the bot's brain. And if you go to ChatGPT and you say, what do Lutherans think about this? You're going to get a lot of different answers, because it's going to be a lot of different Lutherans. If we have some control over this, we can keep it. So what do ELCA Lutherans believe about X? One little funny thing we learned is we loaded a whole bunch of stuff in there, thought we had all the social statements and stuff in it, and we asked it, can a woman be a pastor? And the bot said, I don't know. And what we realized is we loaded all this stuff, Constitution stuff in there. There was no clear statement that somebody who is a woman can be a pastor. So the bot couldn't figure it out. So this is how we learn from doing this kind of stuff. And so our Parish Lay Ministry Academy instructors have been working with it. Catherine's been working, and we want to roll it out. It's not quite ready for prime time because, we don't want to be dangerous with it. But again, these are the innovations and ways that we're trying to use and to grow our leaders. As we mentioned earlier, we have candidates who have been approved for ordination. They are being, as we speak, called. One of them was called just this morning by the Synod Council. Connie Ortega is being called to Adviento as pastor, but it has to be a Synod Council call because Adviento is not yet an established ministry. Brady Fox is finishing up his seminary and is looking at various options. Christine Cracchiola, there you told me earlier, but Christine's over here. Christine, if you would stand up, please, and be recognized. Christine is going to be called to serve at Abiding Grace in Southlake, where she was raised up as a member of the congregation and then served in various roles. And now she'll be a pastor there along with Pastor Bill Lodello. That's going to be the two longest name combinations in the Synod. And the most Italian. Yes, the Italian Lutherans of Southlake. And go back a long ways. There's a lot of history there. And then Trenton Ormsby Hale, who's right here in front. Trent, if you'd stand and be recognized, please. And Trent, we are grateful for Messiah and Weatherford that helped rephrase you, inform you, and then Trent is going to be called to serve at Messiah and Weatherford as Pastor Franz Schemmel is going to finally retire, to Anne's great joy. But if you notice something about these four, notice the congregations that raised them up. Now they come from across the Synod, but they are also congregations that two of them are going to serve. When we talk to congregations and you're wondering who's going to be our next leader, you got to look around the room. You got to say, who in this place needs to go to the Lay Ministry Academy? Who in this place could be a team candidate somewhere? Who could be a leader? Because that's where the leaders are going to come from. I'm not going to do much with this because you don't need to have me read to you, but I just put this slide together because I want you to see the number of ecumenical and creative partnerships that we have going on in our Synod right now. You know, Don's mentioned a couple times he's got a Methodist pastor. Well, we've got two congregations that got Methodist pastors. We've got other congregations that are being served in different ways. That's the reality. That's the future. That's what we're doing. And so again, if you're looking for a pastor, if you're looking for clergy, if you got a Methodist church down the street, what's their situation? How are they doing? If you got a Presbyterian church down the street, if you got an Episcopal congregation down the street, that's what the full communion partnerships are for, is so that we can find ways to work creatively in ministry, not just to keep doors open, right? And that's not what that's about, but it's about ministry and mission. Looking creatively for partnerships, we had a fun time back a couple weeks ago. We had the Leipzig Boys Choir from the Church of J.S. Bach here. And it was a wonderful time to celebrate. And some of you may recognize Robert George Moore, who is a pastor in the Gulf Coast Synod. Actually grew up here near Lubbock. He grew up as a Baptist, and then he heard the Word of God preached. All right, I'll stop. I got to keep moving. I know I'm here, but it was great to connect with him. And then the concert was held at Church of the Incarnation in Dallas. If you've never been in that space, that is an amazing worship space. And to hear the boys' choir from Leipzig. So I got to be there, and I got to greet the folks, and I got to say, you're welcome to the Episcopalians for our Lutheran music. Don talked about it. Ben Duholm's going to talk a little bit more about our trip to the Evangelical Lutheran Church in Sierra Leone. It was a wonderful trip. It was a powerful trip. We had a great team, folks come along with us. It's a long way to get to Freetown. It takes trains, planes, automobiles, boats to get there. When you get there, the ELCSL serves all across the country. They serve a lot in the rural areas, so there's a lot of bumpy rides. But it was amazing to be with our partners in faith, to see what they're doing, to finally say, yes, we can dedicate the Jubilee Center with full faith that it is up and structurally sound. And that's thanks to your generosity. It's thanks to Bishop Momo's tenacity to make sure that building in Freetown is there. And they're using that also to seek sustainability. When we can learn from them. They're building, underneath it, they're putting in a bishop's residence so that the bishop will have a house there at the Jubilee Center, so they don't need to rent a house for the bishop. Making smart decisions about how we utilize resources. We have things we can learn from them. We had wonderful worship, as Don showed us in that video. And then I had a funny thing happen to me. We were out in Jehun, which is out in the eastern part of the country, and we went down a very, very bumpy 4-mile road to get to this very small village. It was the village that Don showed the picture of the dancers. They come to greet us and the traditional dancing and everything. And we went up to the building, and I knew there was a clinic there that we were supposed to dedicate for women and children. And Bishop, when we got there, I thought it was a little funny because the sign was covered up. I was like, why is the sign covered up? And Bishop said, we were doing things, and he said, all right, Eric, you got to come over here and unveil the sign. And I'm like, okay. Why am I unveiling the sign? Well, when I pulled it off, I didn't get very far, and I saw they had named it the Reverend Dr. Kendra Moan Lutheran Clinic. The women of the church, the bishop's wife, knowing what it's like to be a bishop's wife, they had decided they wanted to do something for her. I thought they were going to make a plaque. They like plaques. But instead, they decided to name this clinic for her, and that was a really special thing because it is a challenge to be the spouse of a bishop. And so we're grateful for their partners with the ELCSL. We're also wise enough to know that making it personal brings commitment. But it was a beautiful time to be there. Just 2 more things, y'all, and then we'll be done. Briarwood Legacy Endowment, Janet addressed it earlier. Hard decisions. We still have hard decisions that, it's just real. It's hard to make tough decisions, but here are the benefits, and here where we reap the reward. As I mentioned, $116,000 for the youth gathering, another $50,000 last year for camp scholarships. Already in 2025, $100,000 has gone out the door for camp scholarships, day camp, pastor sabbatical support. Yes, pastors, if you're considering a sabbatical, there is sabbatical support for you. Now, here's the trick. The congregation's got to match the money. All right? We want skin in the game, right? Adam Stockton has accepted the call to Trinity Sherman, so we're going to assess the youth connector position that the endowment was helping us. We're going to see if that's something we want to continue. And then, as mentioned, also the endowment is helping us to have a Synod coordinator for coaching, which again, has anybody signed up, Nathan? Anybody sent you a message yet? Okay, well, you guys, get on it. Get on it. Coaching can help you deal with a lot of things, not just church. So I saw this the other day. I thought this was an interesting statistic, and I don't know how well you'll be able to read it on the board here. But the questions were, and I think about this in our context, and the question was, how important are your views about religion to your identity and how you think of as yourself? And they used the typical evangelical, non-evangelical, Catholic, other religions, etc. 77% of people who were self-reported as evangelical said that their views about religion and identity were very important. 30% of non-evangelical Christians reported that. That's convicting. Now, that's statistics, it's a sample size, whatever. But I think about that, and I think about where we are as church, where we are as synod, where we are as congregations. I think in some cases, people's lifestyle or context allow them to think that they're more connected to their faith and their values. But I think that's something we need to think about, and something we need to talk about as a church and as we go forward. Where do we go from here? We're living in a challenging time. We're living in a disruptive time. We're living in a time that we don't always know how things are going. We're living in a time in which church attendance is down. That's all real. But we have so much. We have so much. We see that when we're raising up leaders. We're going to see that tonight as we share a meal, and then we're going to celebrate anniversaries of ordination. We have the possibility to openness and new partnerships. We're engaging our communities. And the key is we got to center our lives on the gospel. And you can learn more about how to do that through the Generosity Now programs, through all this stuff that we do. But remember, our unity is in Christ. The world is going to try to tell us our unity is in something else. Our unity is in political ideology. Our unity is in the right thought. Our unity is in Jesus Christ. And so I pray that in your congregations you will hear that clearly and you will proclaim that God in baptism has given you the name child of God. And God in baptism has called you. And as Don was quoting from the third article of the Creed, Luther's explanation, I believe that I cannot by my own understanding or effort believe in my Lord Jesus or come to him, but he calls me back. Jesus calls us back, and Jesus has called us together. So thanks be to God. Amen. All right, so you are free to go, and but come back. The cash bar at 6. Dinner is going to be served at 6:30. We'd like you to have found a place to sit so we can dismiss you through the buffet in an orderly fashion.